All right, so we'll go ahead and do the goniometry method first of all. So, sorry about my cold hands. All right, here's the motion I want you to do. Just bring it down as far as you can. All right, so we're doing combined scapular and cervical flexions. We do that. All right, can I see you do that motion? All right, come back up. All right, what are we going to use as an axis?
Can I slide this out of the way?
I was just about to point you out.
Okay, great. I'll slide.
Okay. External auditory hiatus is what we're going to use. Right in the middle of the ear is going to be the axis. All right. Now, what about the proximal arm? Notice the proximal arm could be either perpendicular or parallel to the floor. So which one are you going to do? Well, first of all, where's the distal arm going to go? Base of the nares or nostrils. All right, Josh, can you see okay way over there?
Yep.
I hope so. All right, so I'm going to use an external auditory hiatus. If I'm going to use the proximal arm perpendicular to the floor, actually to the ceiling is good, because if you try to do the floor, you're going to run into a shoulder. Right, just look straight in. All right, so this would be perpendicular to the floor, and then the base of the nares is right there. Okay, so if you're going to use that position, what do you got to look at on the goniometer? Red numbers, because you're starting at 90 degrees. Okay, so that's fine to do it. Just make sure you're thinking 90 degrees. Get yourself oriented. Okay, he's going down that way. I'm going to look at these red numbers right here. Or you can do parallel to the floor, and you're starting at 0 degrees. Here's 0 degrees over here, so I'm going to look at those black numbers going that way. All right, so you can use either way. Just get yourself oriented. Good. Okay. Go ahead and look straight ahead for me. Put your head back up. All right. And then go ahead and let down. All right, as far as you're able to go. Okay. And I don't want any extraneous movement over here. So if I see him starting to move thoracic spine, I'm going to tell him to stop. And I'm getting 54 degrees. Typically, it's what we have 45 to 50 degrees for average. Okay, something like that. Now, will the landmarks be the same for cervical extension? They are. All right, this time, what I want you to do is bring your head back as far as you can. I don't want, if I'm saying extraneous movement in the rest of the spine, I'll just go ahead and stop at that point. Okay? You're going to line up the goniometer the same way to do that measurement. The average range is probably going to be a little higher with extension. What do you got in your notes?
45 to 60.
45 to 60. Right. Okay. But goniometer goes in the same place. Okay, now this is where we introduce the inclinometers. We have 8 of these, so we'll need to share them. Try to be careful, try not to drop them. Believe it or not, these are more than $100 a piece. So it's kind of ridiculous. All right, so you can see there's pictures of how to use the goniometer 327. And then when you get to page 329, it's showing using the inclinometers. All right, so it takes a little coordination because you have to use 2 of them. All right, so where are we going to put the first inclinometer, the lower one? Can you tell from your notes?
T1.
T1, that's right. Ben, is it okay if I use a washable marker to put a little mark on you? All right. All right, so how am I going to find T1? Okay, that's good. So go ahead and look down as far as you can, please. As far as you can go. All right, there's C7 right there. Remember what its nickname is? Vertebra? Prominence, because it's the most prominent one. So if I want to find T1, I go down 1, right? Okay, so I'm going to put a little mark right there. You don't have to put a mark, but it might be helpful. Okay, so that's where one of the inclinometers is going to go. Now, which part of the inclinometer goes there? The part that's right in the middle. All right? So I'm going to put it just like that, right in the middle. Okay, and where's the other one go? Just on top of the head. So there's not a specific landmark, just right on top of the head. And we put it right there. Now what I've got to do is zero out both of them before he moves. Okay? So you'll have to see what that means when you look at the inclinometers. All right, get this 1, 0, and don't move your head. Just keep it where it is. I got 0 there, and 0 there. Go ahead and do the motion for me. Go ahead and put your look down as far as you're able to go. Okay. And then I look over here, and it's at 58 degrees. Oops, this one moved. And this one has gone 3 degrees. So what I have to do is subtract this one from this one. So that's what's 58 minus 3 is 55 degrees. Okay, now why am I subtracting the lower inclinometer? Right, so we're trying to eliminate any thoracic motion that's occurring. All right, so that makes it, a little bit more complicated. You got to get them both at 0 before you start, and then subtract the bottom from the top to get the measurement.
That's pretty close there.
Oh, what did I get before?
54, right?
Oh, yeah, wow. Way to go, Joey. Yeah, and you might find more significant differences between the different methods. Part of that can be, user error. Part of it can be in the instruments. So to increase the reliability of whatever you use, you need to do what? Use the same thing. So you wouldn't want to, if you had a patient and you were measuring range of motion over a period of time, you wouldn't want to use inclinometers one time, goniometer another time. Stick with the same instrument to increase the reliability. Okay, and then we've got one more method for doing cervical motions, and that's using tape measure. And this would just be, go ahead and bring your head to your chest as far as you can. And if there was a space, there's not, you would measure from the tip of the chin to what? That's when you bring your head back up. To the notch of his sternum there, in the manubrial. Jugular notch, yeah. What does your book call it? Sternal notch, yeah. Sternal notch. Okay? Same thing with doing extension. I would measure from the tip of his chin to his sternal notch. That's the tape measure way of doing it. Now, for extension with the inclinometers, notice there's a little bit of a difference. If I put an inclinometer at T1, what kind of happens possibly when it goes back? The head gets in the way, you can't actually get the full measurement. So instead, we're going to use the spine of the scapula. So for consistency, putting mark there. And I did the same thing. I just had the inclinometer over here. And we do the same measurement. Just doing extension, yes.
Are you just doing a marker for us to see, or do we need to do that?
You don't have to do that. It just, if it makes it easier for you.
Okay.
Which it does for me.
Is this done very often?
In an outpatient, you mean inclinometer specifically? Or range of motion?
I meant this range of motion.
Yes.
So which one is used more often then?
Well, honestly,
Yeah.
a lot of times it's, bend your head down as far as you can go.
You're good.
You're about minimally limited, or moderately limited, or just really limited. So often that might be the case. And then there's instrument 2 called the CROM device on page 330. And you will see something like that in outpatient settings. Has anyone seen that being used before? It's this thing that you put on your head that has inclinometers on it. I was going to buy one, but it's more than $300. I thought that was a little excessive. So that's kind of common. Probably a lot of places for the neck, you'll see a goniometer being used. Not for the trunk, but for the neck, because the neck is fairly easy to measure with a goniometer, the neck motions. Okay, anything else about flexion and extension? All right, Ben, would you stand up, please? Seat there, yeah. Okay, can we measure lateral bending with the goniometer? Yeah. What are we going to use for the axis? C7 again. And proximal arm?
Spinous process of thoracic vertebrae.
Right. Hopefully there's no scoliosis there. And then the distal arm.
Posterior midline of the skull.
All right. Okay, so what plane is the goniometer in?
Frontal.
It's in the frontal plane because this is a frontal movement that we're doing. All right, so I've seen all kinds of weird things when people go to measure lateral bending with the goniometer in the sagittal plane. You can't do that. Goniometer has to be in the same plane that the motion is. All right, so Ben, here's what I want you to do. Bring your ear down to your shoulder like that. Okay? Don't turn your head like this or that, right? Just turn straight down like that. Can you do that? Okay. That's a fairly easy measurement with the goniometer. You just line it up and measure that. All right, for the inclinometers, all right, and here's actually where I tend to see people trying to measure lateral bending, and they're doing something like this. Okay? The same thing is true for the inclinometers. They need to be in the same plane as the motion. So I need to turn them which way? Like this. And I believe T1 is the same.
Yes.
Landmark that we're going to use. All right, so you go ahead and do that motion for me, please. Okay. So it's the same thing. I take the measurement down here and subtract it from the measurement up here. Okay. Go ahead, get back to neutral. Again, you have to zero out both of these, and then subtract bottom from top. And again, it is to subtract out any motion that's occurring in the thoracic spine. All right, and then the tape measure is just taking your tape measure and measuring not from the ear, but from, what is this landmark? Right here. We studied a muscle that has an attachment there, the sternocleidomastoid. All right, so the mastoid process is right here. Go ahead and do that motion. I measure from there to the acromion process. You have a picture of that in your book. And of course, if you're doing lateral bending, you do both sides, right? Lateral bending left and right. You have a lot of motion there. Let's measure that. Everybody do that motion. Make sure the truck is straight. Just move from your neck.
15 degrees.
21 degrees. Wow. What do we have for our normal? 45. Yeah, that's some limited lateral bending going on there.
I think I have tighter on this side.
You did have that shoulder injury on your right side.
Yeah, I did. A long time ago. I had two pinched nerves actually in a row on the side. So I was not bad anything to do with it.
What is a pinched nerve?
Well, that's all, and that's what they called it. I went to see a chiropractor, not a physical therapist. So, but basically, they said I slept on it, and I guess when I woke up, it felt like I was paralyzed.
It's like a compressed nerve or something.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then we've got rotation. Rotation's a little bit different. Okay, and let's get you to stand up, please. Let's sit around this way. Have a seat there. And tell you what, I need, Seth, I need you to run like the wind and get me a stool. We should have a little stool either in this lab or the next lab. All right. So you got some nice pictures in your book of all these measurements. So now we're at like page 342. Thank you very much. Go ahead, lean back
Yes, I know.
All right, what am I going to use for the axis?
Top of the head.
In the middle of the head right there. Okay, now, notice where the proximal arm is lining up with. An imaginary line between both acromion processes. So you have to be able to look over the top of your patient. So for some of you, that might mean stepping on a stool to do that, and that's fine, to be able to do that. Okay, and then the distal arm is lined up with
Tip of the nose.
tip of the nose. So again, you have to be able to see his nose over the top of his head. Okay. All right, so there's a lot of room for error for this one. All right, so when I line up my proximal arm, and I don't want you to move your shoulders at all, okay? This is the way you're going to turn your head. Let's go the other way and see what you got. Oh, look at that. There's definitely a difference. He's got, looks like full range of motion this way. He's limited this way. Let's measure both of those just to see what we got. All right, tip of the head. I'm looking at the acromion processes. Tip of nose. Go ahead and go to the right first of all. No movement in your trunk. And I'm going to realign. There's just a lot of room for error for this proximal arm. Tip of nose. All right. Oh, by the way, okay, I was paralyzed there, panicking. Where did I start? 90 degrees. I was looking at black numbers and saying, so go ahead and do that motion. So here's where getting oriented helps. I was looking at the black numbers and I was saying 30 degrees. Okay, Joey, that's more than 30. That's not right. Go to the other side. 150? That's not 150. And so I realized, oh, I started at 90. Okay, so now I'm going to look at the red numbers, and I've got 61 degrees right there. That looks like one. It's reorient. You doing okay, Ben?
Yeah.
Okay, now I've got 66 degrees. All right, what do you have for?
60 to 80.
Okay. All right, now let's go the other way. See what you got on the left. All right, I started at 90, which is right there, so I'm looking at red numbers. And this way, tip of his nose. And I've got 54 degrees that way. So yeah, it's a little more limited going to his left.